Take a moment and pause to notice the miracles of your inner realities. On a daily basis, there's all kinds of magic happening inside of the body-mind. Let's explore some of the ways that this can manifest. Thoughts, ideas, perceptions, perspectives, beliefs, judgments, conclusions, preferences, opinions, inner stories, inner dialogue, mind talk, or automated inner narratives. And that's a category of thoughts. The next category is feelings. And these are manifestations of body-mind miracles inside of our inner realities. The way that personal experience is being kind of translated and simulated through the miracles of the inner energy flowing through all this information stuff going on. So then this can also manifest as feelings, emotions, somatic sensations, gut feelings, mind-body communication, and body-mind communication, because it's a two-way street, the mind and the body. Translations of stimulus, so the things that you're hearing and smelling and tasting and seeing and touching, how that information is being translated and processed into personal experience. When you smell something, it's not just what you're smelling, but the feeling of smelling that thing. Does smelling that thing remind you of anything? Maybe you smell a tea and it reminds you of black licorice, which reminds you of this one experience in elementary school, for example. Or maybe you smell a flower and it reminds you of this chewing gum that you used to chew when you were a kid or something. And so it's not just the fact that you are smelling something and it smells like whatever it smells like. And same with other sensory processing, what you're seeing and how you're seeing it. But it's also the details of how it feels to experience that sensory processing. And that's going to be different for everyone because, we might all have a nose, but the information in our body mind that translates what we're smelling, how we're smelling is different. So 100 people could smell the same thing and all have a different personal experience of it because their body minds are wired differently. Translations of stimulus, sensory processing, interpretations of bodily activity. If you're hungry or thirsty, how are you experiencing the awareness of that feeling? Okay. And so that is a type of navigation from the body mind, inner realities being experienced through projections in the body mind. And other internally felt sensations. So these are all miracles that happen through the mind of our body. So there's a body and there's the conscious mind that we're aware of, but there's also a subconscious, unconscious mind inside of our body. And its information is flowing through trillions of networks, but one of its primary jobs is to provide navigation, to help interpret abstract things like stimulus into personal experience. And so when you have thoughts or beliefs or preferences or feelings or mind-body communication, translations of stimulus, all of that is happening through miracles of the body-mind. And then a next category of the miracles of the body-mind happening through the personal experience of our inner realities. And this can also be described as types of body-mind navigation, different styles of navigation that is provided by the miracles of the body-mind. Step-by-step processes through conscious intentionality and unconscious skill sets, like being able to prepare a meal, for example. If there's a step-by-step process, there's a skill set that's stored unconsciously in the body and procedural memory data. And then there's also the ability to have conscious intentionality to use that skill set in a brand new moment of experience that hasn't happened yet. So it's a skill set that the body mind has learned by doing it over and over again, whatever that might be. Cooking a meal is one example. But then there's also the capacity for conscious intentionality to use that skill set step by step in a brand new moment. And both of those are different abilities in the body mind. Being able to have that data stored and organized and accessible, and being able to consciously use it. Both of those are skill sets exclusively available through the body mind. Habits are a type of navigation of the body mind. Decision-making tendencies and abilities. So tendencies would be those unconscious memory data, and abilities would be that conscious intentionality. And these are, again, both skill sets that are exclusively available through the body mind. Approach avoidance tendencies, the body mind suggesting to reach for that thing, or to avoid this thing, or to reach out to this person, or to avoid that person, or to try to go have this experience, or to avoid this experience, to go step towards this, or to avoid and step away from that. Those approach avoidance tendencies are a type of body mind navigation. Behaviors, just styles of personally acting and behaving, the way your personality kind of shines through into the projections of navigation of personal experience. Impulses and urges, those things you're like, oh, I really want to go do that thing. That's a type of navigation supported through the body mind. Instinctive responses, those automated reactions, those instinctive responses. And that could be a verbal response, like you just say something and you didn't think about what you were saying until it was already said. That was the body mind navigating for you unconsciously. Emotional responses, something happens and you have an instinctive emotional response, and like before your mind can even process what's happening, you're feeling feelings in your body. That's a type of navigation in the body mind. Physical responses, maybe the body actually physically does something. You suddenly go like this, or you suddenly go like this, or whether it's tension or certain postures or certain reactions, the body might have an automated response system to different types of experiences. Physical responses, bodily responses, action patterned responses. You go do XYZ as an automatic response to something that happened. Patterns of action or movement. And this goes along with habits and choice tendencies. Patterns of action or movement, like maybe you're bored and so you instinctively pick up your phone and go to social media, or maybe you're bored and you instinctively open the fridge to get a snack even though you're not necessarily connected with hunger, you just feel like tasting something. Those are types of patterns of action or movement, examples of that. Internal suggestions for bodily movement, internal suggestions for bodily movement and bodily postures. And a fun example of that is if someone has you pose for a picture, your body has an instinctive way of going to a certain posture. Maybe you do a certain pose or whatever it might be, and that's an instinctive bodily posture, instinctive suggestion for bodily movement. Okay, so these are all types of navigation in the body mind. These are all ways that we experience the miracles of our inner realities and personal experiences, personal inner realities, through the miracles of the body mind. Verbal vernacular, patterns of speech, instinctively emitted nonverbal cues. The fact that I'm not talking exactly like this, and the fact that there is fluctuation in the tones of what I'm saying, and the fact that I kind of move my face around when I'm talking. Okay, the fact that I'm communicating non-verbally, it helps to communicate what I'm saying. Those are all types of body-mind navigation. Yeah, I know, I'm getting silly. You're getting silly. I don't get silly. You're silly. Verbal vernacular, the way that you're saying stuff, the words that you kind of know how to grab when you're trying to communicate something, patterns of speech, instinctively emitted nonverbal cues, automated translations of language processing, internal and external communication, the way that you internally communicate. Like if you're trying to think about something or go through a process or, communicate mind to body, that internal ability for communication is a capacity of the body mind and its navigational systems. And same with external communication, being able to have an idea or have a thought, but then actually speak it and effectively organize all of the thoughts into words that flow together, and to have nonverbal cues that support that verbal communication. All of that is only made possible through the miracles of the body-mind. Projections of potential experiences, okay? And this is a big one. Like if you think about something that's going to happen, the body-mind is projecting the potential outcome of something based on the data existing within it, which is a lot of times why memories are kind of on repeat in terms of creating our experiences. And we want to move beyond that. We want to move beyond what has already been experienced and how the body-mind is going to automatically project a potential outcome and allow for conscious intervention so that we can have more authority in the navigation of our body-mind and in the co-creation of our own personal experiences by the energies that we're creating from within. The ability to naturally sense familiarity with people, places, objects, or sensations of experience, okay? If you walk into a room and it feels familiar, it's because the body-mind has memories of being there before. But the body-mind isn't going to be like, here's all the information of every time you've ever been here. Instead, you're just going to feel familiarity. And the body-mind has all this data that it's accessing, but that's not being consciously observed. The thing that is consciously observable is I feel familiar, I feel comfortable, I feel associated with this place because I know my body-mind knows that I've been here before. Same with people, like if you go up to someone you know, the fact that you're like, who are you? I've never met you before. We have a relationship. The fact that you can recognize them and feel a connection and like, pick up where you left off is because the body-mind is using its memories to unconsciously provide navigation beyond awareness. Familiarity, sensations of experience, like if you get into a shower or go to a swimming pool, the fact that, like, oh my God, there's water all over me. This is so freaky. Like the fact that you can have familiarity with a sensation of experience is, again, because the body-mind remembers that it's experienced it before, but instead of consciously retrieving every moment you've ever encountered it, you're just going to have a generalized feeling of familiarity with it. And the body-mind unconsciously is like, okay, I'm accessing all this data of every time we've ever swum in a swimming pool. Okay, boom. Navigating life here, it feels familiar, okay? And so sensations of familiarity, projections of potential experiences, and other instinctive interpretations of reality. And all of this I'm reading is from my SoulSelf Treasure Trove guidebook, one of my dozens of loving liberation launchpads or self-guided journeys. And so if you want to dive into this and actually like have this as a reference, exploring the human experience from the inside out, you can explore my self-guided journeys. The paper's all crinkled now, but it looks really pretty, I promise. But that's what I'm referencing this from, exploring this from. Okay, so taking a moment here, okay? We're just connecting with the fact of these inner realities for starters, and then I'll carry you into the next segue of what we're exploring here. But first, just take a moment to acknowledge this. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have thoughts. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have feelings. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have choice tendencies. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have instinctive bodily postures and movements. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have instinctive patterns of communication with yourself and with others. Take a moment to acknowledge that you have the ability to feel sensations of familiarity. Take a moment to acknowledge that there are instinctive interpretations of reality occurring through your body-mind. Okay, we've acknowledged the fact that we have all this body-mind navigation. Okay, so let's move on to the next little thing. All of this is experienced through the regulation of brain-body systems. And so the way that we experience our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, the ability to access step-by-step processes, the ability to have habits or change habits or shift habits or choose our habits, the instinctive patterns of movement in the body, the ability for conscious choice and response and intentional communication. All of this is made possible by brain-body regulation, the regulatory systems in the brain and the body. And so all of these things are happening through the navigation of the body-mind, which especially comes from memory data, primarily unconscious memories, especially emotional and procedural memory data. So unconscious memories carrying patterns of feeling and movement are at the foundation of the projections of navigation in the body-mind. So when you have a thought, when you have a feeling, when you have an instinctive response, most of the time, sometimes all of the time, until we reach a certain point of conscious awareness within ourselves and intentional choice and intervening in our own translations of reality, a lot of the times that's actually a projection of a memory, but we don't know it. A lot of times when we have a thought, when we have a feeling, when we have an instinctive response to something, when there's a choice tendency, a habit, an action pattern, an approach avoidance tendency, when there's a certain instinctive translation about how we associate with someone or something or somewhere, a lot of times when there's a projection of a potential experience, those are actually memories being unconsciously projected into reality. All of those types of navigation we just covered, navigation is coming from unconscious memories that are projecting interpretations of reality, styles of navigation beyond awareness. And so because it's not a conscious memory, it's an unconscious memory. And it's not appearing like a memory of a past experience. It's appearing as a presently existing thought or an immediate feeling or a brand new response to something. It's actually a memory being unconsciously projected, carrying these patterns of feeling and movement that are navigating life now, and we don't know that it's actually a memory. Pretty interesting. And so the way that all of this is happening, the ability for the body-mind to be carrying all this information and affecting all of these things we just went over, is completely dependent on brain-body regulation. Brain-body regulation. And this includes, but is not limited to, the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, somatic nervous system, brain hemispheric integration and balance, the left and right brain able to communicate through the corpus callosum. And so the way that it's integrated and built up with connections, and also the way that it's balanced and is using the connections, not just that the potential connections are there, but it's using those connective highways between the brain, cranial nerve functionality. And among the things that cranial nerves affect is our facial posture, so that's a fun one, but it also affects other stuff. Cranial nerve functionality, brain waves, the pace at which the waves are cruising on the waves, right? If the waves are like too slow, then there's no movement and you can't even access thought if you try to, which is a very terrifying place to be and can cause some really unique dissociation. And if the brain waves are too fast, then you're on these rocky waves and you're like, oh my God, there's too many thoughts. And that can present like mania, for example. Hormones, neurotransmitters, circadian rhythms, heart rate variability, the pace at which this thing is going off and maybe responding to things. Respiration, the ability for oxygen to be naturally breathed. Like when you're talking, are you suddenly running out of breath because your body forgot to breathe while you were talking, for example? When you're, running or doing a cardio thing, the ability to maintain oxygen flow at the rate you need it while, doing this activity that might not be a normal, 24 hours you're in this state of activity kind of thing, puts a healthy stressor on the body. Can your heart rate keep up with that? If you hear some shocking news, does your heart rate start just going out the wazoo and suddenly you have anxiety in response to everything? Okay, so heart rate variability. Respiration, digestion. Okay, this is a good one. If you're eating food and you're like doing other stuff, is the doing other stuff cause you to be in such a state of activity that your body is not actually digesting your food because the depths of your body aren't feeling relaxed enough to be in those processes, for example. So digestion, the regulation of digestion, the flows of liquid and air throughout the body. I like that. I think of like liquid and air like flowing through your body is so cool. This includes oxygen and cerebral spinal fluid. Perceptual awareness, frontal lobe and prefrontal cortex engagement, and the mohawk of self-awareness. And so that comes back to that conscious intentionality and that ability to choose. Like there's all this navigation in the body mind, but how are you choosing to observe it? How are you choosing to respond to it? How are you choosing to use that information regardless of how that information is presenting itself? And communicative connectivity between brain regions, including that left and right brain hemisphere we talked about, the forebrain and the hindbrain, the mind and the body, and bridges between inner and outer realities, which is made possible by various particulars of the brain regions. Memory processing and accessibility, how new experiences are being processed and stored instinctively, and the capacity to intentionally access memories, and the capacity for unconscious memories to be providing navigation in an effective manner. Memory processing and accessibility, speech capabilities and tendencies. And so we mentioned that in the navigation, but the details of that are made possible by the regulatory systems that provide the container for those potentials. And so I could have all the speech potentials in the world, but if my left brain isn't having the activity of its language centers, then all those potentials won't be able to be expressed. So they're made possible through the regulatory systems. Language processing and accessibility, so not just the ability to communicate this way, but also the ability to receive that communication, to actually understand it and translate it, and to know what is actually being said and whatnot. Language processing and language accessibility. Bodily sensations, needs, responses, sensory processing. So again, the capacity to smell, for instance. So the details of personal experience, like, oh, this tea smells like black licorice, which reminds me of this one time, and it gives me this one kind of feeling and encourages me to have more of this tea because it feels good to drink it. But you can't get anywhere if your regulatory system doesn't have the ability to actually translate smell into something that you can experience through the brain, through projections of consciousness. Time perception, that's an interesting one. Bodily coordination was another interesting one, like your ability to like balance, like you ever do some of those like cool things and you're like balancing on one foot or something, right? The ability to, or like if you're walking and you kind of like run into a wall, you're like, I did not understand the location of that wall in relation with my body. That is the orientation in time and space and bodily coordination. Spatial awareness, orientation in time and space, bodily coordination, time perception, and more. And so again, this is all information that is available in the SoulSelf Treasure Trove Guidebook, one of my dozen-plus self-guided journeys through content creations. If you want to dive deeper into like understanding the human experience through the lens of expanding consciousness and stuff like that. Okay, but where are we going with all this? We're going somewhere with this. Okay, so these are all the different types of navigation we just went over, and all of that is affected by types of regulation, which is the second thing we just went through. All of those are things that are creating the details of our personal experience. But we don't think about types of navigation coming from unconscious memories. And we don't think necessarily in everyday awareness about how the ability to experience that navigation completely depends upon the regulatory states of brain-body activity. And so first step here is just to bring awareness to these components of inner realities and to understand that there's more happening behind the scenes than we can see up front. And so when you have a thought, when you have a feeling, when you have an emotional response, when you have a somatic response, when you have an idea or a judgment, conclusion, inner story, dialogue, mind talk, inner narrative, perspectives, beliefs, something that's coming up, right? Even though it feels like a thought in the present moment, even though it feels like an emotion you're feeling right here, right now, in response to something that's happening right here, right now, even though there's a choice tendency that's happening right here, right now, even though there's a projection of what might happen and you're experiencing that right here, right now, all of that primarily originates from the activation and projection of unconscious memories. And so a lot of the time, we're not having a thought in a new moment. We're actually unconsciously reliving something that was incomplete from the past, but we don't know about that because it's not being accessed as a memory, it's being accessed as navigation. And as we experience these components of our inner realities, the thoughts, the feelings, the choice tendencies, the instinctive responses, all of that, along with originating from unconscious memories beyond awareness that don't feel like memories, because the purpose neuroscientifically of memories is not to store the past, but to navigate present and potential moments. And so not only are these things often not actually things that are really happening right here, right now, but it's actually unconscious memories navigating the moment. So we're actually experiencing memories unconsciously and we don't know it. But in addition, the experience of all of these things, all these types of navigation, are completely dependent on the regulatory states of brain-body activity, okay? Regulatory states of brain-body activity. And so if there's disconnections between the brain hemispheres, if there's a dysregulation of cranial nerves, the vagus nerve, brain waves, different hormones, neurotransmitters, then when we have an emotion, for example, not only are we experiencing unconscious memories that are carrying patterns of feeling, patterns of emotional projections, but there might be additional disruptions because there's dysregulation in the ability for the body-mind to navigate and experience that. So first, just bring a generalized awareness into the fact that there are these inner realities. And we all encounter them just in different ways and to different degrees, okay? So for example, even if you meditate for hours and you're in total stillness and you're in a Zen place, the ability to navigate existence is still dependent on the body, mind, and its navigational structures carrying memories unconsciously, fully supported by regulatory systems of brain-body activity. And so we're all experiencing these inner realities just in different ways and in different degrees in terms of how integrated that data is, how unified and connected and resculpted it is in terms of carrying information that supports our navigation, not just carrying these unprocessed experiences, but carrying effective navigational potentials. And in terms of how aware we are, how conscious we are, how intentional we are with observing and responding to what's happening with this expanded understanding. But we're all experiencing this aspect of implicit health. Implicit health is what I call it. It encompasses mental health, emotional health, action patterned health, or the health of our habits or behaviors or choice tendencies or instinctive responses. It encompasses all of that, including patterns of thinking, feeling, moving, and responding, affecting our mental health, our emotional health, and our behavioral health, or our action pattern habitual health. So first, we just want to bring awareness to the fact that these inner realities exist. And then second, we want to expand that awareness and understand that all of these things, the thoughts, the inner stories, the feelings, the sensations, the step-by-step processes, decisions, choice tendencies, approach avoidance tendencies, impulses, urges, responses, even bodily postures and types of bodily movement, bodily responses, the ability for communication and everything that goes into that, the ability to feel familiarity, etc. All of those are types of navigation stemming from the body mind, especially from unconscious memories, which is what most of memories are. You think about the memories where you can consciously access that as like a teeny tiny bit in comparison with the vast library of unconscious memories that are stored beyond awareness, carrying these navigational patterns, especially potentials of feeling and movement. And then along with that, when we have a thought, when we have a feeling, we have to pause and say, is this a brand new experience? Is this a brand new thought that I've never ever thought before? Is this a brand new feeling I've never ever felt before? Is this a brand new response that I've never ever used before? Is this a brand new choice that I've never ever made before? Because if not, it's most likely a projection of unconscious memories. And then you can say, okay, this is actually a memory. Do I want to use this navigational pattern, or do I want to rewrite this memory and change the way it's providing navigation? Okay, so that's a big awareness thing. And then once you expand into that, the next thing is to understand that the ability to experience this navigation and for all of those unconscious memories to be used in a particular way that might serve and support you is that it's largely dependent on the regulation of brain-body activity. And so you could have like the most, organized memory libraries with just the best unconscious memory data that are just like amazing thoughts and feelings and patterns of movement and choices and stuff. But if there's dysregulation in any of the brain-body systems, then the body-mind won't be able to access and use that information effectively. And so you have to understand that there's a relationship between the navigation of the body-mind, including from unconscious memories, which are flowing through like hundreds and thousands and millions and billions and like trillions of complex energetic pathways. So really like, complex stuff going on there, right? But all of that is also being affected by brain-body regulation. It's also being affected by brain-body regulation. We are going to explore this a little deeper, and I'm going to share a little bit more about my personal journey, what's led to exploring these concepts, a very miraculous healing journey story, some insights about some techniques that I've developed that allow us to explore this and expand it and resculpt it and just interject influence into these structures in some fun new ways, and what has led me to becoming an implicit health life coach and some of the services and products that I offer to support your healing journey. And so there will be some nuggets of inspiring woo-ness and some nuggets of very insightful, that's helpful information, and then some opportunities to dive deeper into any of these concepts if that interests you. If you're on this healing journey and you're like, yeah, that implicit health stuff, cool, let's do it. Let's go deeper. Let's rewrite these thought patterns. Let's rewrite these patterns of feeling. Let's rewrite these choice patterns. Let's rewrite these response patterns. Let's reshift the regulation and the navigation. Let's resculpt those unconscious memories. Let's rewrite those potentials of navigational projections. Let's do it. There's lots of opportunities to dive deeper, working with me personally, and also exploring self-guided journeys that have completely changed my life, which is why I am so excited to share them. They are transformative in the most mind-blowing way, and they are fun and loving and gentle on the journey as well. So stick around and check out the next video, and we will keep diving into it. But for now, this is just some insight to get us started about some things that go into implicit health, mental, emotional, behavioral, action pattern, habitual health, the different types of navigation that can be projected from unconscious memories, and how the body-mind's ability to access and utilize that navigation from unconscious memories is largely dependent on the instinctive regulation happening in brain-body systems. And this is a great first step in expanding inner awareness. And stick around and let's keep exploring this in this little video series.